Hello everybody, welcome back to my extension and renovation vlog, and thank you for stopping by. If you haven't been here before, my name's Georgina Bisby and I am a journalist and a keen renovator, and I am currently vlogging about my extension and renovation journey, extending my 3-bedroom property in the southeast of England. So in this vlog series I'm sharing lots of lessons that we've learned about how to build well on a budget, and I also vlog generally about the camera equipment I use and the process of starting a vlog in 2018 and the challenges of doing so. So if any of that's of interest, please do stick around and make sure you hit the subscribe button to keep up to date. So in this episode I thought I'd just share some lessons we've learned about how you can save money when building an extension, and also areas where it's really best not to scrimp. But before I do so, I thought I'd just recap about what we're doing, because I did talk about it before in the last 2 episodes, but I've just got a little tool with me here today that might make it a little bit easier to explain. And also there's a reason for this, because I wanted to just talk about the challenges some people come across if they've got to build over or near drains, which is something that we had to deal with. So basically this was our existing house. So we had this lounge, our semi-detached neighbour here, we had a kitchen and we had a hallway there. What we originally wanted to do, I will get another colour to make this easier, was, let me just go over these as well to make that easier. So that's our big sort of long lounge room there, the kitchen here and the hallway here. We've got a neighbour there who's actually joined onto our house, and we had a side annex here that joined onto the neighbour's garden, and they had a garage there in fact. So we had hoped originally that we would be able to knock all of this down and then come out like this and knock through here, make a nice big kitchen diner area, and then some storage, utility, downstairs toilet, cloakroom, that kind of thing around there. And we were going to go up and do a small bedroom on the side and a bathroom as well. But that didn't go to plan, because basically the council in our area, and it does vary depending on what area you're in, but they said that they wanted you to, if you were doing a double-storey extension, you had to come in a metre from the boundary. So unfortunately that would have meant that we'd created just a real sliver down the side, basically rooms that were less than 2 metres wide, which we really ummed and ahed about it, but we just thought it's not really worth it. It's not quite wide enough for a bedroom. Not really for a bathroom either. I mean, they would have been okay spaces, but for the cost of the build it just wasn't worth it. It didn't add up. So instead we went back to the drawing board and we scrapped that plan, and we basically decided in the end that instead we would come. The council also insisted that we were set back from the front, so we had to start here, but we decided in the end to come out the side in a metre from the boundary, and then wrap round the back. So we headed out 4.5 metres up the back. When we started planning and we got the planning permission, which we did through an appeal, which I talked about in the previous episode, we were only going to come this far along, but once we started we just thought, do you know what, let's just get on with it. So we actually then applied to the council to extend the extension and came a bit further along the house. Now I've learnt since that that's actually quite a good tactic to get a bit of a bigger build than you perhaps think that you might be allowed, because if you can get the council to agree with what you think you'll be allowed, in our case they didn't, but we did win it on appeal, and then you add a bit on, they're less likely to object apparently at the stage where you apply to add someone. So maybe worth a try if you're trying to get something tricky through. So yeah, basically this is what we've got. This is the new building. Another interesting thing about this project is that our house is a much higher level than our garden. So when we bought the house we had a patio that levelled up with our lounge, and then there was a big drop down into the garden. So this meant that there was a lot of digging down to do the foundations for the extension. We also had to deal with the levels and how we were going to make them meet, and how we were going to get access into the main garden piece, which was down here. But it also meant once we started digging down we realised that we were creating a big area underneath the kitchen, and we thought, you know what, we may as well turn this into a storage area stroke room. So the building inspector was happy with it when they came around and looked what we were doing, and we just said we're just basically going to create under here a bit of a storage area. But there was a challenge, because if we had the ideal scenario we would have been able to make this entire room here into a big storage room, possibly even a room. It would have even been worth applying for it as a room. But we had a public sewer running through the back of our garden, so we had other people's drains feeding into this public sewer. And if you're building into a public sewer, you actually need, I need to just check what it's called, a build over agreement with your local water authority. So we needed to contact Thames Water, and we needed to get permission to build over the top of this, and we had to move the manholes that accessed our drains along here to the side of the build. So at the groundwork stage of this project, there was quite a lot of work doing that. And also you do have to make sure, you have to draw out what you're going to do, you have to explain to your water authority exactly what you're going to do. You get one of these, which you can download online. You fill it all out. It costs £299, which seems quite a lot to me. And they then go through your plans, check that it's okay, check they're still going to have the access that they need to the drains if there should be a problem. And basically, since the water authorities took over ownership and responsibility of the public drains, basically, they actually have to sort out any problems that occur within the public drain area. So if we had a blockage anywhere along here, it would be their responsibility to sort it out. What a lot of people don't know is that if you have a blockage, it's best to call them first, because you won't immediately know whether or not it's in their part of the drain or coming from one of the branches, say down here for argument's sake, that is your responsibility. So rather than getting and paying for someone like Dynarod to come out, first of all contact your water authority, get them to come and look. They can then tell you which part of the drain it's in. If it's in their part, they're going to have to sort it out for you. If it's in your part, it's your responsibility, but sometimes they might even sort it out with you anyway, depending on where you are. So that is worth bearing in mind if you ever have any problems with your drains. Exciting stuff, but it's got to be done, and I think it's one of those things that people worry about, the drains part of it. I mean, one option, if this had been a bigger property and not a sort of semi-detached ex-council house where we felt there was probably a limit on a ceiling price really on the road and what it was worth doing to this property. But an option in another area may have been to actually reroute the whole sewer, but that would have cost us thousands and thousands of pounds, and it just wasn't worth it for this project. So as I said, we have now got this little storage area down here underneath the kitchen, which I will show you. And it's a nice little addition to the build, but it's a shame that we couldn't have gone all the way under here and created a massive underground palace. But anyway, that's for another time. So I thought this might also be a good time just to share with you, now that we've got the main structure of our build up, which is where I'm sitting at the moment, the sort of top lessons we learned about where you can save money and where it's really best not to scrimp. So number one is the plans. Now, I mentioned the plans in my last video, I mentioned the planning stage, and we decided not to use an architect in the end. We used a structural drawer instead, because we didn't feel that we needed a full architect service, because we already had a vision of what we wanted to do ourselves. So we really just needed someone to put the technical aspects of our drawings together. Actually, we tried to do this ourselves initially, so we drew all of the plans up ourselves, sent them into the council. We did it on a program on the computer, and they came back to us and just said they just weren't good enough. Basically, you really need to know what you're doing in order to put together acceptable plans for the council. So that, if you have no experience in that area, I would say is not an area where you can save money. You are going to have to pay some money to get someone to draw up your plans if you're not a professional yourself, but you don't necessarily need to go right to the top to an architect. There are people at other levels that can actually draw those plans and put in that application for you. The second area is project management. So if you've got enough knowledge and experience, you may be able to take some or all of the project management of your build on yourself. Now, in our case, we had family members helping us out with the build. So my dad actually took on the role of the principal contractor, and it's important to make that distinction from a health and safety perspective, because someone needs to be ultimately responsible for the project and responsible for safety. But he basically took on that role, and I kind of worked as his assistant, if you like, doing a lot of the legwork of the project management side of things and trying to learn myself what needed to be done so that in the future, hopefully I could take on a full project management role myself. So the kind of things this involved doing was liaising with the water board, as I've just mentioned, in order to get your right to build for the drains, organising planning inspections at different stages of the build, site management and safety, so sourcing and organising a safety barrier to make sure people aren't accessing the site unsafely, and also signs. I also had to do things like booking scaffolding and sourcing materials and sourcing trades. So number three would probably be labour. Some parts of a build you need to be qualified to undertake, such as the electrics, of course, but there are other parts that you might be able to attempt yourself, particularly general labour. For example, we took on the demolition of the annex ourselves and some of the groundwork, and we are currently overhauling the garden and doing the groundwork for our deck. We will also undertake painting and some of the indoor finishing jobs. But when it comes to actually finding trades and skilled trades, I definitely wouldn't scrimp on that area. Our bricklayers, for example, charged a higher day rate than many others in our area, but they were fast and efficient and their work was exceptional. So much so that we have left some of it unpainted at the front because it was too beautiful to cover up. And it's now actually one of our favourite features of the house. So actually I've since become slightly obsessed with brickwork and I look at it everywhere I go. But looking at around our area in sort of southeast and Surrey in general, there's some really expensive new builds around. And the brickwork is almost what defines these properties, I think, the exceptional brickwork. So if you can find a good brickie, keep hold of them and keep them on side because it's a worthwhile investment. Number 4, an area to think about where you might be able to make some savings is waste. So if you've got a lot of rubble to get rid of, if you're knocking down any existing structures or garden waste, or you're digging down, this is an area where we managed to make a significant saving by using a grab lorry rather than a skip. So in total we've had about 6 or 7 grab lorries and 2 skips, and basically we used the grab lorries to get rid of all of the rubble and the patio and the earth and everything that came out of the ground that we needed to get rid of in the back garden to make way for the extension. But the grab lorries are actually good because you don't need a permit for a grab lorry, which you may well need for a skip, so that's a lot of sort of admin work and faffing around. Also, they can take really large loads in one go, and generally they do work out cheaper than a skip. Prices vary in all areas, but generally they work out cheaper in terms of the volume that they will take for you. So definitely check that out before automatically getting a skip. We got skips towards the end where we had lots of little kind of bits and bobs that needed to be got rid of that we couldn't really take to the tip, that we were accumulating over several weeks. But obviously having a skip, other people end up chucking their rubbish in it and you get people, it attracts people looking in it. So sometimes you don't want to necessarily draw the attention to your house of having a skip. But yeah, an area to think about. And finally, number 5, something that not everyone thinks about, is timing. So if you can be a bit flexible with your build, which quite honestly I think is actually key to saving money and to getting the best results on a budget really. But if you can get some of your work done in the winter when a lot of tradespeople aren't as busy, there's not as much building work going on, you may well find that you can get better labour at a better price in the winter than you would be able to in the summer. Sometimes it's even a question of availability, of finding the trades that you need being available for your project. The winter may be a better shout than the summer, certainly for a lot of the external work, and we actually did a lot of the build work throughout the winter months. So that's it for today. I really hope that you found that useful. I'd love to hear your own challenges and advice you've got from your own projects going on as well, because I do think building work is tough, and as I've said before, it can be a lonely process. So I think sharing experiences, sharing the hardship, it is good because it helps motivate you and keep you focused. Next time I will be talking about some of the innovative products that we've been using on this project. So because I've been working as an editor on a site called Skill Builder, I've been fortunate enough to kind of hear about new products first sometimes, and I was keen to incorporate as many as we could into this build. So things like insulation, where we were getting like the maximum amount of insulation we could, you know, for the space. Light products, so roof windows, solar tubes, that kind of thing. Lots of technologies like that I've got to tell you about. So please do make sure you come back, and I will see you next time, and don't forget to subscribe. Bye bye.